Picture a young man, maybe 30 years old, sitting cross-legged under a fig tree on the bank of a river in northern India. He has not eaten. He has not slept. Night is coming on, and he has made a vow to himself that he will not rise from that spot, not for food, not for rest, not for any threat or pleasure the world can put in front of him, until he understands why human beings suffer.
The tradition says, he sat there, through one of the longest nights ever told. And when the morning star came up, he was not who he had been.
That man is remembered today as the Buddha, the awakened one. And the tree he sat under became one of the most sacred sites on earth.
His birth name, according to the tradition, was Siddhartha Gautama. He was a prince. He had a wife and a son. He had every pleasure his father could buy for him. And one week he walked away from all of it to sit under a tree and answer a question the rest of his kingdom refused to ask.
If you are new to the show, this is Religion Unwound. We release one of these deep dives every single day, alongside a cinematic short that tells the same story in miniature. If the kind of thing you are hearing right now is what you want more of, follow along. That is how more people find us.
So let us start where the story starts. Which is like a lot of good stories with a worried father.
Daniel, set the scene for us. Where are we, and when are we?
We are in the foothills of the Himalayas, near the modern border between northern India and southern Nepal. The time is somewhere around the 5th or 6th century, before the Common Era. Scholars argue about the exact dates, but the tradition places his birth around 563 BCE and his death around 480 CE. This is a few decades before Socrates, a century or so before Alexander.
A different world than the Egypt of Moses, but not so far away in time.
Really not. And what we are looking at is a small kingdom ruled by a clan called the Kshatriyas. Their capital was a city called Kapilavastu. The king was a man named Suddhodana. His wife was Queen Maya.
And Queen Maya has one of the most famous dreams in religious literature.
She does. The tradition says that before Siddhartha was conceived, Maya dreamed that a white elephant with 6 tusks descended from the sky and entered her side. The dream was understood as a sign. The wise men of the court were summoned. They said she would bear a son. And that son would be one of 2 things. Either a great world-conquering king, a Chakravartin, or a great spiritual teacher who would leave the world behind.
2 paths laid out at birth, essentially.
2 paths laid out at birth. And King Suddhodana, for reasons that are deeply human, wanted the first one.
He wants an heir, not a monk.
He wants an heir. He wants his line preserved. He wants his city to have a strong ruler after him. The tradition says the queen went into labor. While traveling to her parents' home, she stopped in a grove of trees called Lumbini, and there, standing up and holding the branch of a sal tree, she gave birth to her son.
Lumbini is still a pilgrimage site today, in southern Nepal. There is a stone pillar there that the Emperor Ashoka set up in the 3rd century before Christ, marking the spot.
That pillar is still standing. You can walk up to it. Ashoka visited Lumbini 250 years after the Buddha's death, and put that marker in the ground to say, this is where the teacher was born.
And then, very quickly, tragedy.
Queen Maya dies 7 days after giving birth. The tradition remembers this. It is not glossed over. The child who will become the Buddha is raised by his mother's sister, Mahaprajapati, who becomes his stepmother and aunt.
So he loses his mother almost immediately.
Almost immediately. And his father, perhaps in response to that loss, perhaps in response to the prophecy, perhaps both, makes a decision that shapes the entire first half of Siddhartha's life. He decides his son will never see suffering.
So suffering itself is what he is hiding.
All of it. The king builds 3 palaces. One for the hot season, one for the cool season, one for the rainy season. He staffs them with young, healthy, beautiful attendants. He gives orders that no one who is old, no one who is sick, no one who is dying, and no wandering ascetics are to be allowed anywhere near the prince. Even the flowers in the palace gardens are plucked and replaced before they can wilt.
He is curating reality around his son.
He is trying to engineer a world in which suffering does not exist. Because the wise men had said that if the prince ever saw suffering, he would leave the palace and take the second path. He would become the teacher, not the king.
And for many years, the curation holds.
It holds beautifully. Siddhartha grows up in extraordinary luxury. He is trained in all the arts of a royal son. Archery, horsemanship, scripture, music. The tradition says he was exceptional at everything. At 16 he marries a princess named Yashodhara. In time, they have a son. They name him Rahula.
And that name, Rahula, means something pointed.
The tradition translates it as fetter. Chain. Rahula is the chain that ties Siddhartha to the palace.
That is a hard thing to name your son.
It is. And the tradition does not shy away from that either. Siddhartha loves his son. But on some level, even at the moment of his birth, he feels the weight of the world closing around him. He feels the gold cage getting tighter.
He is almost 30 by now.
Almost 30. And the tradition says something begins to shift in him. Years of palace life. A growing sense that something is wrong, something he cannot quite name. And one day he asks his charioteer to drive him out through the gates of the city.
Against his father's orders.
The king, the tradition says, has arranged even for these outings. The road is cleared. The old and the sick are moved out of sight. The city is scrubbed clean before the prince's chariot passes. But on 4 separate journeys, something gets through.
This is what the tradition calls the foresights.
The foresights. This is the pivot of the whole story. The moment Siddhartha finally sees what his father has hidden from him his entire life.
Walk us through them, one by one.
On the first ride, Siddhartha sees an old man. Bent over, thin, trembling, hair white, skin sagging. He has never seen old age. He turns to his charioteer and asks, "What is wrong with that man?" And the charioteer says, "My lord, that is old age. Every person who lives long enough becomes that."
Including the prince himself, eventually.
Including you, the charioteer says. Including every person in your palace. Including your father. Including your wife and your son. The tradition says Siddhartha rides back to the palace in silence. He cannot eat, he cannot sleep.
And a few days later, he rides out again.
On the second ride he sees a sick man, a man burning with fever, covered in sores, crying out. Again he asks the charioteer, again he is told, "This is sickness. Any person can fall ill at any time."
And then a third ride.
On the third ride he sees a corpse being carried to the cremation ground, wrapped in cloth. A procession of mourners. The stench of the fire. The charioteer explains. This is death. It comes for every living being. No one escapes it.
3 sights. 3 shocks.
3 shocks in a row. In 3 trips outside the gates, his whole curated world comes apart. The palace was a lie. Every pleasure inside those walls was built on the quiet fact that everyone inside would eventually suffer and die. The king could not engineer that out.
And the 4th sight.
The 4th is different. On the 4th ride, Siddhartha sees a wandering ascetic, a holy man. Shaved head, simple robe, a begging bowl. Walking calmly, with no possessions, no family, no home. And the charioteer explains that this is a man who has renounced the world, to seek understanding.
So the first 3 sights show him the problem.
And the fourth shows him a possible path. The tradition is very clear about this structure. 3 sights of suffering, 1 sight of response.
He goes home to the palace, knowing he cannot stay.
He knows. The night the 4th sight happens, the tradition says his wife has just given birth to their son, Rahula. And Siddhartha stands in the doorway of her bedchamber, looking at the 2 of them asleep. And he cannot even go in. He is afraid that if he picks up the child, he will not be able to leave.
So he does not go into the room.
He stays at the threshold. He turns. He wakes his chariot here. They saddle his horse, Kanthaka. And in the middle of the night, he rides out of Kapilavastu. Out past the gates. Out into the forest. When he is far enough away, he dismounts. He takes off his princely ornaments. He cuts off his long hair with a sword. He gives the sword and the horse back to his charioteer, and tells him to return home. He puts on a simple robe, and he starts walking east.
And this moment has a name in the tradition.
The Great Renunciation. He is 29 years old. He walks away from his wife, his son, his father, his throne, his kingdom, his name. He walks into the forest as nobody. A seeker.
Where does he go first?
He finds teachers. The tradition names 2 of them, Alara Kalama and Adaka Ramaputta. They were the leading meditation masters of the day. Siddhartha studies with each of them. He is, again, exceptional. He reaches the highest states of meditation that each of them can teach. And in each case, when he reaches the summit of what they have to offer, he finds that is not enough. The question he came for is still unanswered.
So he moves on.
And what he takes up next is harder. One that was popular among certain seekers of his time. The path of extreme asceticism. The idea that if you starve the body, if you punish the flesh, you can break through to the truth the body is hiding.
5 other seekers join him.
5 of them. They become his companions. They go into the forest of Urvela, near a river called the Naranjara. And for 6 years, Siddhartha practices what the tradition calls tapas. Austerity.
How extreme are we talking?
Extreme. The texts describe it in ways that are almost hard to read. He ate 1 grain of rice a day. Some accounts say 1 bean. He sat in the sun until his skin blackened. He held his breath for long periods. He meditated on charnel grounds, among decomposing bodies. His body became, in the language of the sutras, like the stalks of a burnt tree. You could press his belly and feel his spine. You could see the sinews of his neck.
And this goes on for 6 years.
6 years. The 5 ascetics admired him enormously. They considered him the greatest of them. He was willing to take austerity further than any of them could.
And one day, he almost dies.
The tradition says he tries to get up, and he cannot. He collapses. And lying there, the tradition says he has a realization that changes everything. He realizes that the body on the verge of death cannot think clearly enough to understand anything. Starvation is not clarifying. It is destroying. The path of extreme pleasure in the palace did not answer his question. And now the path of extreme pain is not answering it either.
So both extremes fail him.
Both extremes fail. And the answer, he thinks, must lie somewhere between them. This becomes one of the foundational teachings of Buddhism. The middle way.
Not too much pleasure. Not too much pain.
A way of living and practicing that avoids both. Enough food to think. Enough rest to meditate. Enough discipline to stay focused, but not so much that the body gives out.
And right around then, A village girl finds him.
Her name, in the tradition, is Sujata. She lived in a village near the river. She had made a bowl of kheer, milk rice, as a thanksgiving offering. She saw Siddhartha sitting under a tree, skeletal, barely conscious.
And he takes what she offers him.
He takes it. He eats. He regains his strength. And when the 5 ascetics see this, they are disgusted with him. They believe he has given up. They turn their backs on him and walk away. Siddhartha, they think, has failed.
So now he is alone again.
Alone, but stronger. And with a new understanding, he walks from the forest of Urela to a place the tradition calls Bodh Gaya, in the modern Indian state of Bihar. And there, near the bank of the river, he finds a fig tree. A palm tree, Ficus religiosa, if you want a botanical name.
And there he takes his seat.
He gathers kusha grass. He makes a small seat at the base of the tree. He sits down facing east. And he makes a vow that the tradition has preserved in many forms. I will not rise from this seat until I have understood what I came to understand.
And this is the longest night.
The longest night. And this is the part of the story where the tradition becomes highly symbolic. It is where myth and meditation blur into each other. The tradition says that as Siddhartha sat there, a figure came for him. A being called Mara.
Mara. Who is Mara in the tradition?
Mara is often translated as a kind of tempter figure. A lord of illusion, a lord of death, a lord of the unenlightened world. You can read Mara as an external demon, and many traditions do. You can also read Mara as the internal existence of the mind itself, the parts of the self that do not want to wake up. The tradition holds both readings at once.
And Mara does not come peacefully.
He comes to attack. The tradition describes 3 distinct temptations over the course of that night, each aimed at a different layer of the seeker.
Start with the first.
The first is an attack of force. Mara summons an army. Demons, monsters, warriors, elephants, fire. The tradition describes them in vivid detail. They throw weapons. They hurl burning stones. They howl and scream. The earth shakes, and Siddhartha does not move.
He does not flinch.
Not at any of it. The tradition says every weapon thrown at him turned into a flower petal as it fell. The whole storm of violence could not break his stillness.
And the second temptation of the night.
Mara sends his 3 daughters. Their names in the tradition are Tana, Arati, and Raga. Craving, aversion, and discontent. They dance before the seeker, the palace, the wife, the son, music.
And how does Siddhartha respond?
He sees through them. The tradition says he sees the daughters for what they are, not real beings, but projections of craving itself. He does not engage. They leave.
And the third and final temptation.
The third is the subtlest. Mara speaks directly to Siddhartha. He says, "Who are you to do this? Who are you to do this? Who are you to think you can reach awakening? What gives you the right to sit here? Where is your witness? Who will testify that you have done the work that earns this?"
So the last attack is straight doubt.
Pure doubt. And the tradition says Siddhartha, without speaking, simply reaches down and touches the earth with the fingers of his right hand. This is the gesture called the earth-touching mudra. You see it in every Buddha statue in the world. The right hand over the right knee, fingers pointing down, touching the ground.
What does it mean?
It means, let the earth be my witness. Through countless lifetimes of effort, through every act of giving and discipline and compassion, the earth has held me. The earth has seen. I do not need you to confirm my right to be here. And the tradition says at that moment the earth itself shook, and Mara was defeated.
And what fills the rest of the dark?
The tradition describes what Siddhartha sees over the remaining hours of that long night, in 3 watches. In the first watch, he sees his own past lives. Every one of them, stretching back beyond counting. In the second watch, he sees the working of karma. He sees how actions ripple across lives, how beings rise and fall, according to the quality of what they do. In the third watch, just before dawn, he understands the deepest thing. He understands why there is suffering, and how it can end.
And the morning star comes up.
And the morning star comes up. And the tradition says that as the first light touched the horizon, Siddhartha Gautama became the Buddha. But he is the one the tradition remembers as the teacher of our age.
What did he wake up to?
He woke up to what are called the Four Noble Truths, the core teaching of Buddhism. And they are deceptively simple.
Walk us through them.
The first, there is suffering. Dukkha in Pali. It is sometimes translated as suffering, sometimes as unsatisfactoriness, sometimes as stress. Every life contains it. Birth, even pleasure itself is unsatisfying, because it never lasts.
And the second truth.
There is a cause of suffering. It is craving. Tanha, grasping at things we want to hold on to, pushing away things we do not want. The mind that cannot accept the way things actually are.
And the third truth.
There is an end to suffering. This is the most radical claim in the whole system. Suffering is not the final word. There is a state, which the tradition calls nirvana, in which craving is fully released, and with it, suffering.
And the fourth truth.
There is a path that leads to the end of suffering. And that path has 8 parts. The Eightfold Path.
Which is what? Exactly.
Right view. Right intention. Right speech. Right action. Right livelihood. Right effort. Right mindfulness. Right concentration. Program for how to live and how to train the mind. It is not a belief system to ascend to. It is a practice to do.
And he sits under the tree for a while, after he understands all this.
The tradition says he sat at Bodh Gaya for 7 weeks, contemplating what he had seen. At one point he wondered whether he should even try to teach it, because it was, he thought, too subtle, too hard to communicate. The world would not understand.
What changes his mind?
Different traditions tell this slightly differently. Some say a god, some say an internal voice, some say simple compassion. He realizes that there are beings who will understand if he teaches. So he gets up. He walks to a deer park near Varanasi, at a place called Sarnath. And he finds, sitting there, the same 5 ascetics who had abandoned him when he took the bowl of milk rice from Sujata.
They are still there.
Still there. And when they see him coming, the tradition says they agree among themselves not to honor him. This is the man who gave up. But as he gets closer, something in his bearing stops them. They find themselves rising. They prepare a seat for him. They ask him to teach.
And he gives his first sermon.
The first sermon. The tradition calls it the turning of the wheel. He lays out the 4 Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. And by the end of that talk, all 5 of them have understood. They become his first disciples. The Sangha, the community, begins with those 5 men in the deer park at Sarnath.
And from that first sermon, the rest of his life opens up.
45 years of teaching. He walks across northern India, town to town, giving teachings, accepting students, building a community of monks and nuns. The tradition says he was reluctant at first, but he allowed it. The order of nuns begins with her.
His son Rahula becomes a monk.
His son becomes a monk. His cousin becomes a monk. His father, the old king, visits him. And the tradition says the king eventually understands. Many of the Shakya royal family ordain under him. No,
Does he ever see his wife again?
the tradition says he does. Yashodhara eventually joins the order of nuns too, much later. The tradition preserves the reunion in several different accounts. It is moving in all of them.
And he dies at 80.
At 80, in a small town called Kushinagar. The tradition says he accepted a final meal from a blacksmith named Kunda and fell ill afterward. Some scholars rate the account as food poisoning. Others as a terminal illness coincident with the meal. He walked until he could not walk. He lay down between two sal trees on his right side, his head to the north, and he gave his last teaching to the monks gathered around him.
What did he say?
The tradition records several versions. The most quoted one is this: all conditioned things are impermanent. Work out your own salvation with diligence. And then he passed into what the tradition calls parinirvana, the final release.
And now the story leaves India.
Now it leaves India. This is one of the great stories in religious history, because for the first few centuries, Buddhism stayed mostly in India. But in the 3rd century before the Common Era, an emperor named Ashoka, ruler of most of the Indian subcontinent, converted to Buddhism after a horrifying war, and he sent missionaries everywhere. To Sri Lanka, to Southeast Asia, to Central Asia, to the Greek-ruled kingdoms to the west.
And the Silk Road carries it further.
It rides the trade routes north, into the oases of Central Asia, across the passes into what is now China. By the 1st century of the Common Era, Buddhism is in China. It travels to Korea, from Korea to Japan. Another strand goes up over the Himalayas, into Tibet. The tradition that develops in Tibet becomes what we call Vajrayana. The traditions in East Asia become what we call Mahayana. The traditions in Sri Lanka and Burma, and Thailand, and Cambodia and Laos become what we call Theravada.
So the tradition fans out into 3 great branches.
3 branches, all tracing themselves back to the same man, sitting under the same tree, the night the morning star came up.
And where does the tradition stand today?
Today, scholars estimate around 500 million Buddhists worldwide. It is one of the largest religious traditions on earth. The Dalai Lama, who is the spiritual head of the Tibetan tradition, is one of the most recognized religious figures in the modern world. And in the last 50 years, something else has happened. The core practices of Buddhism, especially mindfulness meditation, have moved out of the monasteries and into the mainstream.
You find it in hospitals now, in schools, in corporate wellness programs.
You find it everywhere, stripped of its religious framing in many cases, but the techniques are recognizably the same ones the Buddha taught in the Deer Park 2,500 years ago. Watch the breath. Watch the mind. Notice what arises. Notice what passes.
Daniel, I want to pull back for a second and talk about what the story has meant to the people who have carried it.
This is the part I find most striking. Because unlike a lot of religious founders, the Buddha did not claim to be a god. He did not claim to be a messenger from a god. He was, according to the tradition, a human being who had woken up. He said, in effect, I found this. You can find it too. Here's what I did.
That framing is unusual.
It is. And it has shaped the tradition ever since. Buddhism, in its classical form, is less about worshipping a founder and more about doing what the founder did. Following the path he laid out. Sitting where he sat.
And the foresights have not lost their weight.
They have not. Old age, sickness, death, those are not ancient problems. Those are the problems of any living human, in any century, in any culture. The prince in the palace could not escape them. Neither can anyone listening to this conversation. The tradition says that is exactly the point. Naming that squarely, was the beginning of the path.
And his answer to the two extremes still speaks.
The middle way speaks to anyone who has ever oscillated between indulgence and self-punishment, between consuming everything and denying themselves everything. The Buddha's answer was neither. The answer was attention. Careful, disciplined, compassionate attention to what is actually in front of you.
Whether you take this text as literal history, as sacred biography, as wisdom literature, or as all of those things at once, the story has shaped how hundreds of millions of people have lived, and died, and thought about their own minds for 25 centuries.
That is well said. A young man sat down under a tree, and the tradition says something in him woke up. And half the world has been trying to sit the same way ever since.
That feels like the right note to leave this episode on. The longest night. The morning star. A man who stood up from the base of a tree and walked to a deer park to tell 5 friends what he had seen.
Next time on Religion Unwound, we go back to the desert. A very old story. Abraham, father of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The man 3-word religions call their ancestor. God tells him to take his only son up a mountain and put a knife to the boy's throat. The son does not run. The father does not refuse. And right before the blade falls, something stops them. It is the hardest story in Scripture. We will walk through it next time.
I am Sarah.
I am Daniel.
This was Religion Unwound. Stay well.